All right, hi guys. So we're gonna do another lesson here today with living and non-living things. So you guys already have your cards, and I'm gonna go into explaining kind of what the difference between living and non-living things is, and then show you how you're gonna use your cards with a set that has different pictures for them. So first of all, what is a living thing? So we can list a lot of things that are living, but there are several characteristics that actually make something a living thing. So one of them is that all living things are made of cells. And we're going to talk some more about cells in about 2 weeks' time. So all living things are made of cells. And then living things can pass their characteristics on through genes, which is what we saw with our timeline of life, how something that first started like way back early on can evolve over time and pass along different traits. So some of you guys might have like the same hair color as your parents, or eye color, or things like that. Those are traits or characteristics that get passed along. All living things also regulate their internal environment to maintain stability. So we've been doing a lot of temperature checks, and you guys have seen that like over time your guys' temperature doesn't change a lot even when you're really hot or really cold, because your body is working internally to maintain that temperature. So all living things have a form of doing that. All living things also consume and transform energy. And that doesn't mean that all living things eat. It means that they have a way that they consume energy and transform it into something that they can use. So with that being said, cells, for all living things being made of cells, are the basic functional unit of all living things. The cell is the smallest unit that can still be considered a living organism. So we talked about atoms last week and how they are the smallest unit that makes up everything, but they are not living. So cells are the smallest unit of living things. So most organisms actually only consist of one cell. That's things like bacteria or protozoa. Other organisms like us, humans, consist of many different types of specialized cells that do different things. And then for the living and things consuming and transforming energy, the source of all energy on Earth is our sun. And so through the process of photosynthesis, plants actually can transform energy from the sun into food. And then those plants then can become a source of energy for animals who can eat them. And then the decaying bodies of dead plants and animals can become another energy source for decomposers like fungi and bacteria. So, how do living things interact with their environment? So, living things require food or an energy source. They can make their own food like plants do, or they can use outside food sources, kind of like we as animals do. And then movement. Living things have an internal movement. So substances can move around inside of their bodies, and most of them have external movement as well, because I can go like this. Or we could swim, or they can walk, or they could fly. Humans can't fly outside of planes. It'd be cool if we could, but birds can. Breathing and respiration. So living things exchange gases with their environment. So if I breathe out, I am putting a gas out into the environment, and if I breathe in, I am bringing more in. So animals like us take in oxygen through our lungs, or in the case of fish and other animals, through gills. We use it in ourselves, and then we give off carbon dioxide as waste. Then plants then take in carbon dioxide and use it in their photosynthesis, and then they release back out oxygen. So what type of gas and things that you need to live depends on what type of organism you are. And then excretion. Living things produce waste of some kind, usually as a byproduct of their food source or energy source. So, in most living organisms that are big like us, for humans, that means, guys, that you get pee and that you poop. That is how you get rid of excess food waste that your body doesn't need to use. And then growth. Living things grow by using that energy to make more cells that are able to do their different functions. And then living things also respond to their environment. So things like light or sound or movement or temperature are living things will respond to. So I would be able to tell if it got hotter out, but if I was sitting next to a rock, the rock is not living and can't respond to that heat by moving away or finding a way to cool down. And then reproduction. Living things create more of themselves in some way passing on their characteristics through their DNA. So, non-living things do not have cells that need energy in order to function. They don't move by themselves. So things can happen where the wind might blow something that's non-living, water might move it from one spot to the other. I can pick up a rock and take it from one place to the other, but it's not going to move by itself. Some outside force is going to have to move it, kind of like in one of our laws of the universe. So, breathing or respiration. Non-living things do not need to exchange gases with the environment. Excretion, they do not produce waste. Now, I could break something like a solid apart and make it into smaller pieces, but that is not excreting waste from something that it has brought into itself and then used energy from. Non-living things can get bigger for growth. They can add more of the same material. You can make a patch of ice bigger by adding more water to it and letting it freeze. But they don't experience growth by creating new cells the same way that living things do. And then, like I said, non-living things can be acted upon by the environment, like that rock getting hot, but they can't act according to what is happening in their environment. They're just kind of stuck. And then non-living things do not reproduce or create more of themselves through passing on their genes. Now is the kind of fun part, because there's non-living and there's living. And then there's things that were once living that can make up non-living things. So, once living means anything that was once alive. So that includes things like paper and wood, because that comes from trees. But once it gets to the point where it's a piece of paper like what I have here, it's no longer living because it's been made into paper, but it was once, parts of it were once living. Other things that kind of were once living are things like coal and oil, like we talked about with our timeline of life being made up of decomposed matter from ancient plants and animals. And leather is another material that's been made from animal skin. Jam has been made from fruit, and things like peanut and sun butter have been made from the seed of a plant and crushed and formed into something that we can eat. So, with that in mind, you guys, you don't have a category for living and non-living things, but you have a card that says living things and a card that says non-living. Yours might not have the definition underneath, and that's okay. So you guys are going to get to go through and decide based on your cards which items are living and which are not living. So I can see that my car here, parts of it might have been made up of things that were once living, but it is as a whole non-living. And then I have people, so they would be living. And I'm just going to go through and kind of place my items based on where I think they go. So I've got some living things. I've got my windmill here, which again, if that's wood around the outside, parts of it were once living, not any longer. And I'm going to go through and just place things down for what I think is living and non-living. Butterfly fish. Now, when you go back and look over your cards, you might look over and go, ah, yes, I think that all of these were living. And I can look back over my cards and go, oh, wait a second, I put these flowers here. Well, that can kind of depend on your definitions of things. Because if these are pictures of flowers that like grow outside, then it could be categorized as something that's living because it's a living plant. But I also maybe thought that these were fake flowers like I find in the store sometimes, and then I could think that it was non-living. So guys, if that's one where like you're not sure what type of something it is, you can place it based on whichever you think the picture is. Now, I actually think these are living flowers, so I'm gonna move them back over here. But if I was pretty sure that they were fake flowers, I could keep them over here as non-living and kind of think of it that way. So that's what you guys are going to do for your living and non-living work. And you also have a scavenger hunt where you get to go outside and find things according to the category that they're in. And some of them you guys have already talked about a little bit, and some of you guys have actually already done the scavenger hunt, and that's okay. You also still have your cards to do. Thanks, guys.